Today on MuscleCar, learn how to adapt a small block Chevy to receive a pavement-pounding aluminum monster as we plug our ZL1 427 into our COPO Tribute Camaro. Also, the science of plating pot metal and how to bring a barn find to life without burning it to the ground.
Hey folks, we're getting ready to start stage 2 of our 69 Camaro no-po to COPO build. If you remember, we're going to take the small block out of this car that Tommy found for us and transform it into a tribute to one of the most iconic muscle cars ever built. We partnered up with Chevrolet Performance to do something a little extra special with this anniversary edition ZL1 427 Big Block. This is a recreation of the fabled 1969 ZL1 engine that was found in a mere 69 special ordered Camaros from that year. With an aluminum block and heads, along with 4-bolt mains, a forged steel crank, rods, and forged aluminum pistons, you can expect easily to see power in the mid-400s on pump gas, and maybe even a bit more than that, all with an incredibly iconic engine sitting under the hood.
Pretty much the only thing that we've done is knock off some of the chrome and take off a few of the frills that this Camaro came with, which isn't all that bad of a deal because most of the COPO Camaros were low option cars. They didn't really come with all those creature comforts.
But of course, since we're going to wedge this big aluminum monster into that car, we're going to need to make a little room. The original 307 that came out of there will probably find a home being rebuilt in one of the other shows, but now it needs to come out of that car. In addition to that, we've got to unload the Power Glide transmission that came behind the small block. Now, we borrowed this Muncie transmission case for mock-up to see how things are going to fit under the car, but we're working on getting a Rock Crusher 4-speed of our own because that's what the COPO would have came with.
Now you guys may be wondering why we're draining some of the fluids. The reason being is once you pull this dry shaft and you go to pull all this stuff out, all that stuff is going to wind up on the floor. So just take a few extra minutes, save you some cleanup time.
Hold on. Okay. Okay.
Ah, yucky. Ah, yucky.
Let me guess, all the water that came in the back just went out the front.
It like runs downhill.
There's that mess we were talking about. Show them the pretty hood. Whoa, where are we going? I've already busted off one of the spark plugs, but I'm not too worried about it because they're old plugs in an old motor that were taken out. But I like to leave them in the motor because you never know. It's going to sit in the garage, sit in the shed, sit outside. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull the header back and I'm going to knock the porcelain off, which will make it easier for me to get the header out, lift the motor up out of the car. Even if you leave the broken plugs in the motor, it keeps it sealed up, keeps the weather out of it. And therefore, if you're lucky, it won't end up tied up.
Looks like I got the easy side. After I unbolted the header, it came up through the top. Next is to clear out the stuff on the top of the motor that ties it to the car, starting with the heater hoses, radiator hoses, and the cooling system. This little old 2-barrel is going to go away too. And for no more real estate than this little thing takes up, it sure does have a ton of lines, vacuum hoses, and components latched onto it. Once everything is out of the way, we can bring in the hoist and get to jacking.
Go ahead and back up a little more.
Still ahead, why do so many trim pieces acquire those little beauty marks and what it takes to fix them?
Well, alrighty, we've got our engine pulled out of our soon-to-be COPO Camaro along with the transmission that was bolted up to it. Once we swap some motor mounts around, that aluminum ZL1 engine will drop right in where it needs to go. We've also got us a mock-up Muncie that we're going to use to make sure everything's exactly where it needs to be.
But there's going to have to be some floor pan repair and modification done while we're at it. The driver's side floor in this car is going to have to be completely replaced and the transmission tunnel modified slightly to go from an automatic to a stick shift.
With the floor modifications that have to be done, we want to get the seats out of the way so we can work unhindered. The carpet's got to go too, and we're planning to order some brand new that we can install back in there a little later on.
All right, I know what you guys were thinking for just a second there, but believe me, I'm not going to hook up this old equipment to our new Jewel. This is the stuff we promised you earlier, which is going to be for the mock-up. What we're going to do is bolt all this together and just set it in the car on its motor mounts and transmission mount, because what we need to do once we get this thing down in there is make sure we have enough clearance for the secondary items, such as pulleys, fan to radiator clearance, big one being exhaust manifolds, which is always a problem with steering mechanism, and just to make sure, even though we're going from a small block Chevy to a big block Chevy, that everything will still fit. After I get them all in, when I go to snug them up, what I'll do is I'll go from side to side, back and forth to make sure it tightens up flat against the motor and doesn't end up cocked in any way, shape, or form. Come on down, Tom. I'm on the pinch weld on the firewall. Take her up just a tad. There we go. Okay, time out. My concern is this HEI distributor. I'd hate to damage any of it.
We're gonna have to lose that wiper motor for right now, or drop a valve cover off because it's touching.
Push down on the nose and push in. Kind of like that. Nowadays, modern transmissions have the linkage and the adjustment for it inside the case. But old school transmissions like Muncie's had them mounted on the outside in conjunction with the shifter. When it comes to muscle cars, there are a few things that are more iconic than the white 4-speed shifter knob. Just take a look at our logo. And one of the biggest icons in the business is still around, making some of the best shifters today. This Hurst 4-speed shifter that we got from Classic Industries comes with fully adjustable gear stops, which limit the throw on the shifter itself, therefore eliminating the potential for damage inside the transmission. The linkage kit, also from Classic Industries, is a direct bolt-on from the shifter to the transmission, making our job very easy.
With the bottom half of the shifter installed, we'll use it as a guide for where to place the hole. Then we'll pull it off to keep it safe, and with the hole saw, we'll make the initial cut. After the shifter gets reinstalled with the top half on it, the linkage can be hooked up as well. Then the retainer can be removed so that it will shift. Now we can keep shifting the tranny and cut out the metal that prevents it from moving all the way through the gears. Once we're satisfied that it moves like it should, we'll call it good.
Everything's working.
Stick around and we'll show you a unique trick to check an engine's viability without doing more harm than good.
You've seen us take a few trips to advanced plating in the past to get our shinies re-gleamed. Today, they're gonna walk us through a type of metal plating that we haven't seen before, pot metal. It turns out that pretty much the most commonly plated type of car components are made of pot metal.
Well, since we started our Camaro project, we knew sooner or later we'd have to attack these bumpers. Structurally, they're in good shape, but they've got to be replated. So we came up here to Nashville to see our buddy Steve at Advanced Plating. What do you think? Can you save her?
Well, Steve, that's an above average core. We can work with that. While you and Tommy are here, let's take a look at pot metal restoration. That accounts for approximately 70% of all restoration on parts here at Advanced Plating.
Whoa, I didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah, big number here.
America, industrial miracle of the century.
You see, back when these old cars were being cranked out, the building process left a whole mess of scrap metal laying all over the plant. The manufacturers sure didn't want to waste all that stuff, so they found a way to make sure that every little bit got used on non-structural pieces.
All right, guys, we are in the strip room now, and we're gonna take a look at stripping the chrome and nickel off some pot metal parts. What pot metal is the accumulation of scrap metals from the foundry. It's aluminum, brass, lead, zinc, and some iron. These metals are all melted together and then they're formed into die castings. These little blisters on here represent those metals separating underneath the plating. So we're gonna remove the chrome and the nickel here. If you try to sandblast this off, you're just gonna open that pitting up and you're gonna distort the part. Really, the proper way to do it is electro-strip it. It's a bath of sulfuric acid, water, and glycerin. It chemically reverses off the chrome and the nickel. All right, guys, we're now in the polishing shop here at Advanced Plating. Chris is prepping a trunk ornament for a Chevrolet here. So what he's doing, he's sanding off the initial copper plate and leaving the pitting alone.
Once the copper has been removed from the surface, the voids are all soldered up with lead. This is the optimal material to use for this process because of how well it works with both the multitude of metals in the pieces and with the plating agents that will be used later on. Then they get a little bit of body work, so to speak. The repairs are sanded with the goal of returning the surface back to its factory shape.
So now we're on the plating line and we are going to electro-clean our parts. Just like we would not paint over dirt, we're not going to electroplate over dirt. Thus, we're removing all the debris from the metal prep. Now we'll go from cleaning to a clean water rinse and then to a mild acid etch. So what we're doing at that point is we are removing the cleaner film and slightly pitting the metal. We found out over the years it's better to put the cyanide copper base on a coarse surface versus a smooth surface.
This cyanide copper bath doesn't last very long, but it's important because it prepares the piece for the next step.
So into the acid copper we go.
And after a couple of hours in the acid copper, your pieces come out looking like this.
Now they'll go back to the polishing department and the parts will be sanded and copper buffed, all the imperfections removed, all the repair covered. Then they proceed back up to the line to be nickel plated and chrome plated, which you guys have seen here many times.
Coming out to Advanced Plating today and going through the process of watching what it takes to get good quality chrome plating has given me a completely new perspective on it. And Steve and the guys down here have got it down to an art in their facility.
Ever wanted to see if a motor was any good in a barn find? Coming up, take these steps to test it out.
Hey guys, welcome back. We're out of the studio today, but for a little bit of a different reason. We've all read those ads in the papers, on the internet, and heard stories from friends about this car that's sitting in a garage or a barn somewhere that we'd love to get a look at. Whoa! Well, a friend of the show gave us an opportunity to come out and take a look at one that they found right here in this barn. We're going to maybe give you a few tips on what you might look for if you're planning on buying one. Well guys, we got it pushed outside. Some of you may recognize it, some of you may not. AMC Javelin, not a bad car though. The body's nice and straight, the glass is all in it, it's been sealed up. Let's take a look under the hood though and see what the engine looks like. Whoa, not too bad. V8 powered and factory air. This may not be a Camaro or Mustang, but it is a body from the muscle car era. So whether or not this V8 engine operates is definitely going to affect the value. So I'll show you guys a couple things you can do without getting into the whole car just to see if it'll operate, and most of all, just to see if it's not froze up and free. It's a good idea if you think you might want to start to bring a battery or a charger box. Not only was this one dead, it was gone. Here's what I'm doing. I'm going to use a jumper wire. We're not interested in making this car run. We just want to see if it'll crank over and maybe start. The reason I'm going to use this is I don't know how long this car's been sitting. And as we know, our little rodent friends like to make homes and nests inside the upholstery and under the dashes of cars that have been sitting idle. If I use a jumper wire, all I'm going to do is hook up hot feed to the ignition coil and not do anything to the wiring inside the car where accidental fires can start. I've seen it. Right now, all we're gonna do is concentrate on just the motor. When I was talking about rodents grounding out wires by chewing off insulation under the dash and causing problems, this is how fast it can destroy a car by fire. See how fast that was? You do not want that to accidentally happen inside the car. Okay, basically all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shortcut the ignition system and jump right across the starter solenoid, see if we've got power. Well, regardless if the weather's hot or cold, highly humid air can make starting your vehicle a lot harder. When moisture air gets trapped in your ignition system, it becomes a barrier to transmitting energy through the distributor cap to the wires and plugs. It's kind of like trying to start a fire in the rain. WD-40 disperses water, so we're going to spray a little under the cap and down into the body of the distributor to dry everything out. Wipe the cap inserts, and with the rotor out, clean the blade for better electrical contact. And lube the centrifugal advance weights with WD-40, as well as the vacuum advance linkage. With the cap back on, we're going to wipe off our wires with WD-40 multi-use product to eliminate some of the dirt that might act as a ground in steel performance. Well, let's give it another try. Well, we pulled this old girl out of the barn today, and with a little help from WD-40, I guess our engine's nice and free, like we were hoping it would be. Saved a little time with that damp ignition system. It actually doesn't sound too bad. Quick and easy tune-up that works. But most importantly, we showed you guys a couple of safe shortcuts to find out whether or not the motor in it is still worth saving. If you've got any questions about anything you saw on the show today,
Go over to PowerBlockTV.com.